policy as a time for the public to provide comment. The Board of Education and the superintendent will not respond to any comment during the meeting. We will, however, provide a written response to each member of the public who is recognized either by mail or the U.S. Postal Service. Next on the agenda is the Face of a Raven Awards recognition.
Thank you. Board members, if you could head up to the stage at this time. Each month we recognize students and staff and a community member for their dedication and hard work. Face of a Raven is our saying here at Ravenna right now, and it stands for fiscal responsibility, academic achievement, community support, and the experience that each person gets to serve. So we're happy to recognize our award winners. If we could start with our staff members over in the corner first, and then followed by our students by grade level, and then our community member will be our last one. Principals, if you could help out and organize your students. Staff, I need you up front first. All right, get set. Ready? Okay. All right, our first award winner is Mrs. Christy Young. She's a speech and language pathologist from Ravenna High School. Mrs. Young is an important part of the Ravenna High School staff. In addition to working with students who receive speech therapy, she has generously shared her personal family stories of international adoption and domestic adoption through foster care with RHS child development classes for the past 5 or 6 years. She has also visited service learning classes over several years to give students directions and insight on working with students with communication differences in our special education classrooms. Helping typical students make personal connections to content and class activities is so incredibly important, and Mrs. Young facilitates those connections in a variety of valuable ways. Going above and beyond is an everyday occurrence for Mrs. Young, and she is definitely a face of a raven. Congratulations. Okay, our next staff member is Miss Debbie Miller from Transportation. She's one of our bus drivers. Debbie treats all students with respect and equally. She makes sure all of our students get to school and home safely. She advocates for our students with disabilities and makes sure that all of their needs are met. Debbie is very helpful with our kids. She goes out of her way to make sure they are always safe and treated as equals, and she is always willing to help and step up when needed or sees a need at transportation. Congratulations, Mrs. Miller. Our final staff member is Ms. Kristen Plageman, our treasurer. Kristen came to Ravenna at a very trying time financially for the district. She has jumped in immediately and took the bull by the horns. She has worked diligently to get the district back on track financially. She has great knowledge about academic programming, grant funding, and career tech education. Not only does she handle our district finances, but she's also a top person to bounce ideas off of for any academics and programming. She's determined to bring Ravenna out of fiscal caution, and at the rate she's working, this seems to be a real possibility with her as our treasurer. We're lucky to have Ms. Plageman on our team. Thank you. All right, on to our students. Our first student is from the preschool, Ruby Sherman from Ms. Marcinick's class. Ruby is a kind and respectful student who consistently shows care and consideration for both her classmates and the adults in the room. Her responsible nature makes her a reliable and trusted member of our classroom. Congratulations, Ruby. Great job. right, our next student is from kindergarten at West Park, Akira Trusso. Akira's a rock star student at West Park. He's a great example of a Raven Way student. He is respectful to all of his friends and teachers. He shows responsibility for his work. He always does his best to stay in control. He is such a kind student and always curious. He likes to ask questions in class and develop a passion for learning. He loves being in Miss Kremer's and Miss Smith's class. They think the world of him. Kira is very well liked by his peers. Keep up the great work. We are very proud of you at West Park. All right, our next student from Williard is a first grader. It's Lorene Haliba from Mrs. Biltz's class. Lorene is an exceptional student. She is pleasant to work with. She's a very hard worker who was always ready for the next activity. She is kind to others and a very good friend. Miss Dene and Mrs. Biltz enjoy having Lorene in our classroom. Congratulations. All right, our next Face of the Raven Award winner is from West Main, Lillian Jewell. She's a fourth grader in Mrs. Brackenrich's class. Lily is our Face of a Raven by being respectful, responsible, and in control. Lily always treats her classmates with kindness, making sure to include everyone in group activities. She works hard on every assignment, often going the extra mile to make sure her work is done neat and very well. Her dedication to doing her best and being considerate of others makes her a positive influence in the classroom and at West Main. Congratulations, Lily. Hold on, Brian. We're going to read Brown real quick. Unfortunately, our middle school Face of a Raven is ill today from school, but I wanted to read what they had to say about Kylie Heater, an 8th grader. Kylie has greatly improved since her 5th grade year at Brown Middle School. It's great to see as an 8th grader that she has started to take ownership of her behaviors and has started to see the impact that behavior can have on academics. Because of this, she had made great gains in both areas. The only time she comes to Mrs. Burwell's office now is to bring gifts or to share how great she's doing. She should be super proud of herself, and they're proud to name her February's Brown Middle School Face of a Raven. Congratulations, Kylie. All right, you ready? Our high school student is Bryant Thompson. He's a senior, and he was nominated by Mrs. Poppelmeyer, one of our English teachers. Bryant is my student aide second period. He took it upon himself to sit next to and help a student who was struggling with their essay. Bryant didn't do the work for the student. He actually tutored him and helped him through the process. Bryant has really shown growth and leadership since I've had him in class last year. Congratulations, Bryant. All right, our final Face of a Raven this evening is our community member, Sarah LaRoche Knapp. Sarah LaRoche Knapp, known to many around the district as Mrs. Knapp, is an outstanding example of a Face of a Raven. She is invested in her community and Ravenna School District. She donates, fundraises, and volunteers for Ravenna School District and the students, it seems like, on a daily basis. She subs as a secretary and aide of food service and in the library. She's also the PTO president for the elementaries and helps meet the needs of the building, staff, and students through fundraising and events. Mrs. Knapp also volunteers at both of her children's buildings as a parent as well, always offering assistance. Mrs. Knapp donates her time and vehicle for the service of Raven Packs, aiding in large portions of our students' having access to meals on the weekend. She does so much, and they're not sure if they can even list all of them. She has a service heart that is focused on our students and staff at Ravenna School District, and she's a shining example of what a face of a Raven should be. Congratulations, Mrs. Knapp. Okay, before everyone leaves, we're going to try and get some pictures out in the cafeteria. We're going to take just a brief recess. We'll do pictures right around the back of this wall, and then as soon as we're done, you're more than welcome to stay for the meeting. If you have other things to do, you're more than welcome to head out after the pictures, and then we'll reconvene the meeting after that. Thank you.
It always empties out.
Okay.
That's just unbelievable.
Treasurer's update.
Yes. Let me just do this real quick. So, all right, it's up on the board, but the board members, you have these documents, and it was also in our finance committee meeting. So this is the time when we start getting some information, some funding formulas from the governor's office. The governor funds school districts in 2 years, so we're at the end of year 2. So it's kind of the spring of the end of year 2, we start seeing some numbers coming out and some formulas. So this is just one of the proposals that has come out. This is from the Senate, and I did take a screenshot of like the Portage school districts and how the funding, this funding formula will impact the Portage City school districts. So for Ravenna, in FY25 and FY26, they combined it. We would see a state funding reduction of $464,929. And then in FY27, we will see an additional $637,942 state funding reduction. So again, this is just a proposal. I'm just trying to be transparent with the community and the board on, this will probably change again next week, and I will present to the community and to the board all of the changes. But this was the first thing that came out, and this one came out on Friday. So this is the Senate proposal on the reductions. Thank you. Any questions from the board? No? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can we have our superintendent's update?
I just have a few things I'd like to touch on. First of all, I want to congratulate our boys bowling team. They finished second at sectionals this weekend in Division I, finishing behind Boardman and ahead of Twinsburg, Austintown, Fitch, and Salem. They'll be going on. The top 5 teams from Division I qualify for districts, and they've been a real bright spot in our athletic program this year. So congratulations and good luck to our boys bowling squad. Just a brief update on West Park. As we mentioned in our last meeting, we will be closing West Park at the end of the school year. Williard will become kindergarten, first and second grade together in one building. The teaching staff will be moving with the students over to West Park. There have been some questions raised on our posts on social media, and I just wanted to address a few of those. One of the parents asked about traffic on Summit Road. I know that that's a real big issue now, even without the kindergartners. So we've been working with the local church next door, as well as PMHA, who manages a lot of the homes over on Harvest Drive. We're going to be trying to get everyone, not just the new people, off of Summit Road and come through Harvest Drive, because that's real dangerous with the 40-mile-an-hour speed zone, and our school zone is not very wide. So we do have a plan for that. Someone asked what will be the use of the building, or what's going to happen to the building after it closes. We plan to follow Ohio Revised Code on the disposal of an unused public school building. We're currently going through an appraisal for that, and once we have that, we'll follow Ohio Revised Code. There's a whole list of things that we have to do in order to either sell, rent, or dispose of the building. Someone asked if class sizes would be changing. Class sizes will be similar to this year. We want to continue to provide quality instruction, and class sizes will remain in a manageable ratio, just like we have this year. Kindergarten orientation has been moved to Williard instead of at West Park this year, so the students get to see the building. That's scheduled to happen on March 12th, and then registration will begin the following week at Williard for an evening, and then also following up at central registration for next year. And as more information comes about, we'll provide those to families. We hope to do some type of celebration or honoring the building at the end of the year, as well as how busing is going to look and change. We'll be eliminating that route at West Park, so that will aid us a bit, but we'll make sure that we are communicative with the staff along the way as we go. The final thing I want to do tonight is introduce our interim business manager, Hal Kendrick. He's filling in with for the remainder of the year since Mr. York has retired. Don't want to put you on the spot, but Anything you want to say, Mr. Kendrick?
Just glad to be here. I've worked in 4 or 5 different school districts since I retired about 4 or 5 years ago. I don't seem to know how to retire very well. But I love what I do. I love taking care of our buildings and our staff and our kids, and just making sure they have warm, safe, dry buildings, and the emphasis on safety. So I appreciate you having me here, and I'll do what I can to move the needle in the short time that I'm here. So,
Thank you.
We appreciate you jumping in quickly with, given the circumstances and filling out for the remainder of the year. We got some big rocks ahead that we're going to be working on together, and appreciate you jumping in and taking the bull by the horns. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. May we have the Maplewood report?
Our meeting is not until this coming Thursday, so I have no report as of now.
Okay, thank you. And I have an update for Parks and Recreation. Ravenna City Council met at their January 21st meeting as a whole, and one of the things they did was they amended the ordinance for the composition of the Ravenna Parks Board, which did have 2 of us as board members on there. Now it's down to 1. So only 1 school board member will serve on the Ravenna Parks and Recreation, and that's one of the positions I hold right now. So there's been a change, and they're updating their bylaws as well. There are some upcoming events. They're on March 15th. There will be the Marlene Watts Pot of Gold Poker Run. The Easter extravaganza is on Saturday, April 19th. And then Friday, June 6th is the summer celebration. So there's lots of events coming up. And all of the information is on the Ravenna Parks and Recreation website for deadlines and things like that. So that's all I have to report on for that. Okay, next is our reports from our treasurer.
First is financial items for approval. We have a consent agenda, numbers A1 through A6. A1 being the approval of the January 27th special meeting board minutes. A2 is the approval of the January 27th business meeting. A3 is our gifts and donations. A4 is our monthly financial reports. A5 is approval of then and now payments. A6 is the approval of transfers.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve consent agenda items 12A, 1 through 6?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Ms. Dukes?
Yes.
Ms. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, the next is the approval of our monthly monitoring workbook.
May I have a motion for the approval of the monthly monitoring workbook for January 2025?
So moved. Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Ms. Dukes?
Yes.
Ms. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Motion carried. Next are the reports and recommendations of the superintendent and other administrators.
Thank you. The first is business recommendations A, 1, and 2, consent. They're both memorandums of understanding. The first is with the University of Akron College Credit Plus program for next year, and the second is for Stark State College Credit Plus program for the following year. We have to have these memorandums of understanding in place so that our students can get credit should they choose to use the CCP program.
May I have a motion to approve consent agenda A, items 1 and 2?
So moved. Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Ms. Dukes?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Number 3 is a standalone. It's to approve a purchase service agreement for the remainder of the school year for Casey Withers as an educational assistant at Maplewood Career Center for not more than 3.5 hours per day. So she is spending time here at Williard for part of the day, and then helping out and servicing another student at Maplewood for half a day as well.
May I have a motion to approve the purchase service agreement?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call?
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Ms. Dukes?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Number 4 is to approve membership agreement with the Ohio High School Athletic Association. This is a yearly membership. This is for 25 and 26. Whereas Ravenna School District has satisfied all the requirements for membership in OHSAA, a voluntary unincorporated association for not-for-profit, and the Board of Education and its administration desire for the schools with 1 or more grades at 7 through 12 under their jurisdiction be voluntary members of the OHSAA. This is to allow our athletes to participate in sports as well as follow the Constitution, bylaws, and general sport-specific regulations and business rules, as well as participate in any tournaments at the end of the year.
May I have a motion to approve the membership agreement for the Ohio High School Athletic Association?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Ms. Dukes?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Number 5 is approve a payment in lieu of transportation agreement with the Miss Erica Sertel to transport her students at the state minimum of $583.86 as per Ohio Revised Code 3327.02.
May I have a motion to approve payment in lieu of transportation agreement?
So moved. Second.
Any questions or concerns on that one? Roll call?
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Ms. Dukes?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Number 6 is to approve a resolution to purchase a van. Mr. Kendrick worked very hard to find a transportation van for that is wheelchair accessible. This is a new van that's been modified, even though it's 2023. It takes some time to modify that. And this purchase would be through the Western Reserve coach sales for our transportation department for some of our special ed kids.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the resolution for a van purchase?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call?
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Ms. Dukes?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Number 14A is for certified employees. This is a joint resolution for numbers 1, 2, and 3. The first is to accept the resignation of high school guidance counselor Jen Browning. Number 2 is to approve unpaid child care leave of absence for Lauren Johnson, second grade teacher at Williard, for the remainder of the year. And the final is to approve a permanent substitute teacher. This is something that we added into our contract years ago and have not been able to use, but Alexis James is so thrilled to be working at Brown Middle School that she's asked to become a permanent sub for the remainder of the school year at the negotiated MOU rate.
Very good. May I have a motion to approve consent agenda A 1 through 3?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Ms. Dukes?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Letter B is supplemental contracts. This is for numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. The first is to accept the resignation of our cheerleading advisor, Samantha Fincham. The second is to accept the resignation of junior class advisor, Jen Browning. The third is to accept the resignation of the co-sophomore class advisor, Mrs. Browning. And the fourth is to approve the athletic coaches as listed.
May I have a motion to approve agenda item B 1 through 4?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Ms. Dukes?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Letter C is volunteers. This is to approve the employment of 2 volunteers that will be helping out with track and softball, as listed.
May I have a motion to approve employment of volunteers?
So moved. Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Ms. Dukes?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Finally, letter D is for our classified staff. Number 1 is to accept the retirement resignation of as educational aide Kim Cipriano. Number 2 is to accept the resignation of educational aide Brianna Holcomb. Number 3 is to accept the retirement resignation of Gary Smith, our head custodian at Brown Middle School, effective August 1st. And the 4th is to approve substitute employee as a bus aide, Scott Dacus.
May I have a motion to approve consent agenda D, items 1 through 4?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Ms. Dukes?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Motion carried. Informational items. Next Board of Education meeting will be on Monday, March 17th. The end of the third 9 weeks is Friday, March 21st. Spring break, no school, Monday, March 24th through Friday, March 28th. Good Friday, no school, and that's Friday, April 18th. Conference Comp Day, no school on Monday, April 21st. The board has need for an executive session. May I have a motion to enter into an executive session?
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Ms. Dukes?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Motion carried. An executive session or private session of the board is controlled by the Sunshine Law. It may only be used for special purposes outlined in the law. No action can be taken by the board during executive session. In accordance with Ohio Revised Code 121.22, the Ravenna Board of Education will go into executive session for the sole purpose of consideration of number 2, employment, number 8, investigation of charges, complaints against a public employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual. B, to consider the purchase of property for public purposes or for the sale of property at competitive bidding if premature disclosure of the information would give an unfair, competitive, or bargaining advantage to a person whose personal private interest is adverse to the public interest. Number D, preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and condition of their employment.
I also just want to point out under number 15, recognition of public, we had no one sign up for non-agenda items.
Thank you.
Do we need a vote?
Yes, well, didn't we do that? We did that, I'm sorry.
Did we vote, all right?
Yeah, we did
Okay.
at the beginning, yes. And we will be over in the community room. back on record. We have returned from the, to open meeting, and you've got the time recorded?
Yep.
Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Calhoun?
Yes.
Mrs. Dennison?
Yes.
Ms. Dukes?
Yes.
Mrs. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Wisniewski?
Yes.
Motion carried, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good
I have
meeting,
a
good
couple
meeting.
things